Many states in Nigeria were grappling with fundamental issues like payment of salaries, provision of primary health care before the arrival of coronavirus in February 2020. Since then, things have become a lot worse, with many of those states now taking out loans from international organizations and governments. Back home, increased tax drive rather than diversification at all the expense of the citizen. For how states, governments in Nigeria have been managing the dynamics between generation and expenditure of funds during the COVID-19 pandemic, we are now being joined by Honorable Efe Ofobruku, Special Advisor to Governor Ifeanyi Okowa of Delta State on legislative matters. Great to have you and welcome to the show, Efe. Efe, let's go straight to it this morning. How has it been like, the balancing act responding to COVID-19 and still managing the state resource? How's it been like for you in Delta State, for instance?
Well, thank you very much. In Delta, well, it has not been easy, but let me say that probably we're lucky to have had somebody like Senator Dr. Hon Efe Ofobruku as governor as of when the pandemic struck. This is a man that has been administrator, senator, that has held different positions in government, so he understands what it takes to manage and run the government. So when the pandemic struck, all he needed to do was to, do an introspection and work out modalities to see to it that survive. In chemistry, there's a principle known as the Le Chantalier's principle. The Chantalier's principle states that when a system in equilibrium is subjected to stress and external stress, the system will adjust in such a way as to annul the stress. And that was exactly what our governor did. Being a medical doctor, he has passed through the sciences. He knows the Le Chantalier's principle. So as soon as the finances of the state was subjected to external stress as a result of the COVID-19, he had to work out internal mechanisms to adjust so as to annul the external stress. So part of the measures that was adopted by the governor was to embark on pay cut, especially for political office holders, 20% for salaries, 25% for allowances, so as to open up more funds for government to continue to thrive. So it has not been easy, but so far so good. We had the right move at the right time, charge, and we are forging ahead.
Well, let me ask you, in the context of COVID-19, state governments across Nigeria, not just Delta State, have been saying they have the same problem with the federal government in terms of revenue, low revenue, decreased IGR, problems with allocations from the federal purse. And people have been told to make sacrifice, the average Nigerian. Now, fuel price has gone up, electricity tariff has gone up. People have been told to make sacrifice and be patient. But Nigerians are concerned that the governors, other leaders within the public space, they don't seem to be making any sacrifice. The convoys have not reduced. The expenditure patterns have not been curbed. What do you say to all of this? Don't you think that our leaders, even when they are managing COVID-19, are not showing us the right example, either with regard to spending profile or even something as ordinary as the use of face masks?
Okay, so quickly, let me say that without wanting to hold brief for all governors across Nigeria, let me talk about the state where I operate, where I'm part of government. You will agree with me that there has been a drastic cut in terms of expenditure of government. Let me give you a quick example. Before now, there are several events that are government organized that people have to turn out and mass, people have to attend. But some of these events are now done online using different platforms. You will recall that because of the use of such platforms, the cost that would have been incurred in terms of logistics and movement from point A to point B has been cut off. Apart from that, for Delta, I can tell you for free that it is no longer business as usual. The convoys have reduced, the movements have reduced. Some activities that used to take place in government have completely been severed. Let me give you an example. Somewhere along the line, normally, certain persons in government, either the bureaucracy, that is civil service, or even those political class, are supposed to attend some kind of capacity building trainings, outside the state. But in an attempt to make sure that we reduce the overhead, the cost of running government, some of those capacity building trainings have now been localized. Instead of maybe 20 people traveling to Lagos or Akwa Ibom for a retreat or to train, we now have a situation where the trainers come in-house to train those concerned, thereby cutting costs. So apart from that, there are even other areas where, some kind of expenditure that ordinarily should be beneficial to those who are in government and, even the bureaucracy, civil servants. For now, all of that has been put on hold. But don't forget that even while you are trying to sustain the bureaucracy, salaries are given, people also want to see that action is being taken in terms of infrastructural development. People also want to see that action is taken in terms of human capital development. And you don't forget that all of this were part of the promises made because of the electionary campaign. To that extent, whereas we have done some cost cutting in a lot of areas, but we have also made sure that we do not by any means renege on any of our promises as far as development and good governance is concerned. So we are making haste slowly, but we are still very much in line with the promises that have been made to the state.
Right. The Delta State Economic Council is barely 3 weeks old, but can you give us some kind of outline of objectives that they've outlined so far? Because the aim of it was diversification, but in the advent of COVID-19, obviously, I'm sure the emphasis may have varied a little bit. Can you give us some information about that?
Okay, so you will recall that there's this popular saying that radical situation demands radical solution. The advent of COVID-19, if you ask me, is a radical situation. And of course, His Excellency the Governor has had to also take radical steps to think about radical solution to what has happened. So now, what we have decided to do is to look at the situation we find ourselves realistically and make possible projections that, okay, if this continues, if this this present financial downturn continues, for how long is it going to continue? How are we going to survive? What are the things we need to do to see to it that we survive by adventure? There is a prolonged stay of COVID-19. Don't forget that before now, the words of distinguished Senator Ike Ekweremadu, former Deputy Senate President, he did say that we operate filibuster federalism in Nigeria. And of course, you know what that means, where states primarily go to the center to get allocation before they begin to make this happen in their states. But now we have known that with the advent of COVID-19, that pattern may not necessarily be sustainable. To that extent, the government has decided to top a team that will look back, do a review of the processes of the system we have operated before now, and work out the modalities of how to operate outside such system in such a way that if COVID-19 continues or there's another challenge next time, we will not have the pain or will not feel the effect like we have just experienced. Rather, be able to adjust our ways and continue to move ahead while making sure that service, which was the promise made by the administration of the state, service is still rendered, salaries are still paid. But don't forget that a state like Delta has one of the biggest wage bills in Nigeria, not because of political appointments, but because we have a large workforce. But having such a large workforce, are you going to lay off everybody because you want to cut down? Don't forget that these people are Deltans and they are earning their various livelihoods from working for government. To that extent, the government also has to look into area of trying to manage the very big workforce and at the same time render services, not just service, but service that is viable, service that is economically beneficial for the state, while also making sure that create a template for Deltans to become self-sustaining. That is why you discover that the Delta State government has embarked on massive skill acquisition program. People have been trained in agriculture. People have been trained in different technical areas. That's why the state government has decided to develop the vocational and technical education area. In fact, a ministry has been created for that purpose, and different vocational and technical schools are being built across the state. His Excellency, the governor, has made sure that every local government in Delta State has vocational and technical education. As I speak to you, 9 are under construction simultaneously in 9 local governments, in addition to the few we had before. I want to assure that by the end of this administration, we should have 25 vocational and technical education centers in the 25 local governments of Delta State, so that we can develop a skilled manpower, that we can have a labor force that has a skill, such that you don't necessarily have to rely on government or begin to look for a job every now and then for you to survive. So that tomorrow, if there's another outbreak, with the skill you have acquired, you should be able to make something happen for yourself and your family and be able to put food on the table for your family.
All right, in the spirit of scientific laws and postulation, I think it was Newton's second or third law of motion that said action and reaction are equal or opposite. The opposite reaction to all you have said the Delta State government has done as regards COVID-19 pandemic has been criticisms on the way the state handled COVID-19 pandemic and the likes. In fact, others are even making inferences like, oh, at a time like this COVID-19 pandemic, there's a big infrastructural project going on in the state. I'm talking about the state secretariat going on. Some have said we think that project will have installed a bit, just to allow more cash to be able to trickle down to the people in the state. A lot of people said they didn't get the palliatives from the state. A lot of people said they were unfairly treated. What's your reaction to all of this?
Well, a quick one. If you talk about the secretariat project, that project did not just start today. The project was already about 90% completed before pandemic struck. And if you ask me, you will not stop a project that was already at 90% level because there's a pandemic. Don't forget, if you are very conversant with Delta, if you have been to Asaba before, the state capital, you discover that most offices of government are scattered all over the capital city. Most government offices are largely rent. Delta was one of the states created in 1991. So there was need for government to accommodate their workers and offices because the state government is paying so much as rent for those properties that were rented. Now, having looked at our books, we discovered that it will pay us more, which is a very wise business decision. It will pay us more to have our own facility, our own property, where we don't have to pay rent, where more government offices will be accommodated, and to continue to be tenants, to continue to pay rent. And guess what? Most of these facilities that are rented by government are poorly maintained by the owners because they feel it is government. A lot of times, government goes ahead to spend money to maintain these facilities so that the office environment will be conducive. So if we have to be doing that, why don't we get a place of our own? So the issue of the secretariat is like a tenant. A tenant, you are living in a rented apartment with your landlord or your neck every now and then, and you make frantic effort to build a house of your own so that you can move in. The house is 90% completed, and pandemic struck. You are not going to stop building the house because pandemic has gone. You will complete it so that you can quickly live in and thereby eliminate some costs that you have been incurring in time past. I think that is what we have done. On the area of the response to the pandemic, you will discover, if you check the statistics, that Delta State has one of the lowest numbers. If you just oppose it, if you place it side by side, let me finish. If you just oppose it, if you place it side by side with the volume of testing that is going on in the states, it is not necessarily because we are not testing enough. It is largely because we quickly took steps to make sure that people were, largely restrained from moving up and down. We embarked on a lockdown to see to it that people didn't move about as freely as they used to. The state government even went ahead to change market days to 2 times weekly, the later 3 times weekly. And the markets were relocated from the areas they used to be where they are shops. The markets were now moved to open spaces where table A of the tomato seller is not as close to table B of the pepper seller the way it used to be in the conventional market. They were now moved to open spaces where they can maintain social distances so that the days they will trade, they just trade for a specific number of hours and go back to their homes. The government also went ahead to make sure that largely during the lockdown, it was largely food items that were being traded. More open markets where all kinds of things were being traded during that period. So as to limit interaction. A lot of activities were curtailed. Church services, even gathering in mosques, social gatherings, they were all curtailed. So when you say that the response has not been good enough on the part of government, I think that is trying to be economical with the truth. Whoever is saying that is not be fair to Delta State. Don't forget that we have medical doctor as governor of Delta State, and it is expected that this should be his area of strength. He should know better. We also have a very proactive commissioner for health. There are many incidentally, there are many doctors in politics, there are many doctors in government in Delta State. They have put heads together. People, some from the legislature who are medical doctors, they are part of the team. We also have people who volunteer because we are Deltans. Don't forget, Self-preservation is the first law of nature. We have to preserve ourselves as Deltans. A lot of persons volunteered, join hands with the government to see to it that a very good response is, carried out when the outbreak of COVID-19 came up. But most importantly, on the issue of the palliatives being distributed, I can tell you for free, there's this popular saying that Oliver asks for more. Delta is one of the few states where the palliatives got to, to the very grassroots because of the method that was used to distribute palliatives. If you leave palliatives, I can tell you for free that people will continue to collect palliatives from now till further notice, because they believe we have this mentality in Nigeria that, oh, this is my share of the national cake. So the distribution has been going on. I can tell you, I was out of my house. I came back in the evening, and my Megad showed me some foodstuff that he got, courtesy of, the palliatives that were being distributed by the state government, because the government got the clergies involved. Both the Muslim community, the Christian community were involved, civil society were involved. Then notable Deltans who are not partisan, but are known people in our various communities were nominated. His Excellency the governor made sure that it was not distributed using party structure. Delta is a PDP state. The governor did not allow the party structure, the party machinery to get involved in distribution, so that it does not become something of a gratification to party men and women. Different stakeholders across different sectors of society were involved. Initially, I can remember there's a nominee from my ward, Ubia Ward 9. He called me on phone to say, he got this call that he has to be a part of the committee to distribute palliatives, that he doesn't want to wahala, he doesn't want to be involved. And I told him that, no, you are one of those people look up to in the area where you live. If the people see that you are involved, it will give them a sense of hope. I believe that, yes, government means business. You are not a member of my party. You are, to the best of my knowledge, you are not in any party. So you do this as a way of service to the people. And as of this morning, he called me again to say, yes, the palliatives got to them, but he provided a venue to store them. And as of this morning, distribution is going on. I'm talking to you from Asaba. The distribution is going on in nowhere. I am not there. I didn't have to go there to go and try to influence in favor of my supporters or my party men and women. It is meant for Deltans. And I believe that to a large extent, distribution is getting to a large number of people at the very bottom of the ladder, at the grassroots level. It is not the same method being deployed by other states.
Well, Efe, I would like to see if we can move the conversation away a little bit from Delta State and talk more about broader issues of national interest. And still on COVID-19, now we're told we have over 57,000 cases, 1,100 deaths, about 48,000 persons who have been discharged. And Nigeria is opening up, schools are resuming, places of religious worship are back. Everybody is beginning to go about their normal business. What is your assessment of how Nigeria as a country has so far handled COVID-19? Do you think that our approach has been data-driven enough, particularly at a time when other countries are shutting down, when they look at the numbers in the event of the easing of lockdowns in those countries? And then some of them are even saying they will shut down, like the UK, a second time. How do you think we have fared?
Well, I think that so far so good, considering the limited resources we have and the kind of environment we find ourselves. I would say that as a country, we have not done badly. But if you look at the way the thing is going, you will also discover that it seems that even lockdown is not the only way to cure this, to solve this problem. Because it's like you find yourself in maybe a smelly environment, and you decide to stop breathing so that you don't perceive the smell. There's only so much you can do. There's only a limit to how much you can stop breathing because of the smell. At some point, you can't hold your breath anymore, otherwise you will pass out, you will die. So somehow you have to find a way to start breathing and at the same time trying to manage how much of the bad smell that goes into you. I think that is what is happening globally. The lockdown was deployed, and I think the lockdown seemed to have reached the breaking point where it was deployed, but at the end of the day, there's still a spike in many nations, and they are now looking for other means to try to see to it that it is solved. So if you ask me, for Nigeria, I think we are doing our bit to the best of our ability, considering the kind of peculiar situation we find ourselves in terms of availability of resources, in terms of the level of literacy, of ignorance, because the truth is, a lot of our people do not even believe that there's anything like COVID-19. So when you try to explain to them and talk to them, sometimes they become very confrontational, especially during the lockdown when people were asked to stay at home. A lot of people complain about their businesses going down, about their goods they have in their shops perishing, and all of that. So personally, I think the drive now should be continuous education, emphasis on the use of face masks, especially as you appear in public domain, in public space, outside the home. Continuous emphasis on the use of face masks, hand washing. Such hand washing facilities should be made available in as much places as possible. Then there should be serious and a strict enforcement of the use of face masks. I believe if we do all of that, to a large extent, we'll be able to continue to keep afloat, as it were, bear in mind the situation on ground. Because if we have to go the way of many other nations, don't forget that some of these nations, like in Europe and in North America, there were frantic effort by government to reach out to the citizenry by doling out some reasonable amount of money to citizens. You know that here in Nigeria, we cannot afford all of that. So we have to also devise our own local way of trying to see to it that use the numbers in our own small way, and that reduce the rate of infection, the rate of transmission, or increase the rate of testing, sometimes see how we can manage the COVID-19 in our local way, that have it to spread it further than we already have. So far so good. I think we are trying within the context of the kind of environment we find ourselves.
Yes, indeed. It appears that we have it under control. We're bucking the international trend as we are opening up more. Delta, specifically, like Lagos, is opening up restaurants, cinemas, and what have you. Other people are closing down. Let's hope it remains that way. But let's talk about the damage that's already been done to our revenue, state revenue. Federal allocations, obviously, is going to be reduced. What is Delta State doing in terms of internally generated revenue, increasing your tax base, and trying to attract foreign direct investment?
Okay, so now, just like you said, economies are beginning to open up gradually. Apart from the foreign countries, you mentioned Lagos, trying to open. Delta is also trying to open. But we run a government that has a human face. We are not going to, kill the citizens because coronavirus happened to boost revenues. Whereas government is taking steps to see to it that internally generated revenue is increased. What the government has said to do is to broaden the tax net. Try to bring in as many people as possible who were not within the tax net before now, so that we can, increase IGR as it were. But remember, I did mention that Delta today is one of the states that is making frantic effort to train a self-sustaining workforce. Now, this workforce, these persons that are acquiring these skills, we expect them to go and start up their own small businesses, and the government supports them, the government encourages them. But you are not just going to start up your business and government becomes set for that Christmas. We expect that having acquired this skill, as you start your own business and you are beginning to earn something, government should also benefit, because the training you got, it was taxpayers' money that was used to fund it. Government also benefits from some of these persons that have been trained. Then we are also moving gradually and systematically into other areas where it can become very sustained in terms of food production. We are, as a government, we are pursuing food production drastically. Don't forget that Delta has a very large extent of riverine communities where fishing is one of the major businesses. So government is equally encouraging our people who are from such areas to continue their business, to support them, to go into not just fishing conventional rivers, but also using modern agricultural techniques to go into fishing. If you travel to places like Uwe local government, you travel to some parts of Oshimili South local government, Oshimili North, if you go to places like Wari South local government, Udu local government, Uwe North local government, Isoko South local government, even Isoko North local government, a lot of our local government is supporting the citizens to go into agriculture, particularly fishery. fish repair, not the conventional way of just going to the river, but being able to go into fish production with the support of government so that within a short time you can produce enough fish, not just enough fish, sizable ones that can be sold, that will earn you good economic value, while government on its own also gets taxes from that area. As we speak, the state government, in Ubia local government, the state government is also developing a plant where a fish feed will be produced, because it has come to the notice of the government that a lot of people in that axis are into fishery. A lot of fish production activities going on. So there's also need to produce a feed to which these people feed the fish in their various ponds. You don't need to travel out of the state to go and start looking for feed for your fish. You don't need to travel to the next town to go and start looking for. So bringing fish feed production near those who have need for it is one of the steps that will be taken by government to see to it that business becomes sustainable. But above all, there has been great court government expenditure. There has been great court. I can tell you that there has been great court, because we are determined to support our government to succeed. We are determined to support our government to succeed. It's our government. It's Delta State government. The government didn't make COVID happen. President Buhari didn't make COVID happen. Dr. Okowa, the governor of Delta State, didn't make COVID happen. COVID happened, and it happened to everybody all over the world. So what do? We have to make adjustments to support government, to see to it that government does not completely collapse, the government continues to render service, while the people too are playing their role, making their modest contribution to it that at the end of the day, they come out of it and become better people.
Well, thank you very much, Efe Ofobruku, for joining us on the morning show today.